In the hidden chapters of our solar system's forgotten past, there are two worlds that now lie silent: Mars and Maldek. Once, these planets are believed to have been home to thriving civilizations, cultures advanced in both knowledge and technology, perhaps rivaling or even surpassing our own. Yet, according to ancient accounts, channeled teachings, and esoteric traditions, both worlds were forever changed by catastrophic conflicts. Wars of such unimaginable scale and power that they did not simply bring down empires. They altered the very fate of the planets themselves. Mars, once a vibrant world filled with flowing rivers, vast oceans, and a flourishing atmosphere, was left dry, scarred, and desolate. Its surface today bears the silent testimony of a civilization that reached great heights but was undone by its own divisions. Malldec, a planet said to be even larger than Earth, suffered an even more tragic fate. Its people unleashed forces they could not control, tearing their world apart. What remains of Malldec now drifts through space as countless fragments, forming the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. In this video, we journey into the mysteries of these long-lost worlds. We will explore the legends and uncover the hidden stories behind what has come to be known as the Mars and Maldek Wars. Throughout the history of our universe, there have always been higher groups of beings entrusted with guiding the unfolding of creation. These cosmic stewards oversee the evolution of planets and the design of life forms across countless star systems. They serve as guardians of civilizations and architects of destiny, cosmic planners working in harmony with the Creator, all in service to the one infinite Creator, with a single overarching purpose: to nurture the evolution of consciousness throughout the universe. Among these caretakers, the Elohim Collective hold a central role. As seventh density beings, their responsibility extends to the very seeding of life itself, bringing forth the sparks of consciousness that take root on planets and stars across the cosmos. Working alongside them is the Council of Planets, a body of wise overseers who design long-term evolutionary plans for worlds, monitor their progress, and introduce experiments meant to expand the possibilities of growth. Many of the great leaps in planetary evolution, including the veil of forgetfulness and the division of the brain into hemispheres, arose from such experiments, each a trial intended to test which conditions best cultivate the soul's journey back to unity. One such trial took place in the Sirius system. There, two neighboring civilizations were guided along very different paths. On one world, beings were attuned primarily to the right hemisphere of the mind, encouraged to grow through intuition, spiritual connection, and inner knowing. On the other, their counterparts were guided toward the left hemisphere, toward intellect, analysis, and the power of the ego. The outcomes could not have been more distinct. The right-brained civilization blossomed. Within only a single evolutionary cycle, they ascended into higher dimensions, their unity and inner harmony carrying them beyond the limitations of physical existence. The left-brained civilization, however, struggled. Their brilliance in analysis hardened into pride and division. The ego overshadowed spirit, leading to conflict, competition, and separation. In time, their world collapsed under the weight of its own imbalance, a cautionary tale of intellect without heart. The Council of Planets studied these results carefully. They learned much, but their work was not complete. Could there be a way to weave intellect and intuition together? bringing the sharpness of reason into balance with the wisdom of spirit. Determined to refine the experiment, they turned their attention to another world, Mars. On Mars, the design was adjusted. Beings were created with a deliberate bias, 70% toward the left hemisphere, with the remaining 30% reserved for intuition and inner guidance. The hope was that this blend would produce a civilization of brilliance and balance, a people who could harness the power of intellect while still remaining anchored in wisdom. But Mars, too, fell into shadow. The Martian people became extraordinary in their sciences, mastering technology and the art of war. Yet as their intellect grew, their inner compass weakened. Intuition was overshadowed, spirit forgotten. Their achievements fed their pride, and their weapons fueled their conflicts. In time, the brilliance that was meant to elevate them turned inward, consuming their world. Mars was scarred and left barren, a civilization undone by its own imbalance. Around 225 million years ago, Mars was a world far different from the barren desert we see today. It was a planet alive with vitality, capable of nurturing life and supporting the long journey of consciousness through its evolutionary stages. From the very first expressions of existence, the raw elements, minerals, and forces of nature, Mars evolved steadily, layer upon layer, until higher densities of life emerged. In time, it became a fertile ground where consciousness could flourish, even reaching into the realms of fourth density awareness. Mars was home to an abundance of life forms, elements, rocks, plants, animals, and eventually humanoid beings, mirroring the evolutionary pattern we now recognize on Earth. In fact, in its earliest ages, Mars and Earth were nearly twins, seeded by the same great cosmic architects who scattered the seeds of life across the universe. Mars's ecosystems reflected Earth so closely that they once hosted nearly identical species: mammals, reptiles, amphibians, insects, birds, and even massive dinosaur-like creatures that roamed its lands. By some accounts, nearly 80% of the life that now thrives on Earth first walked, swam, or flew across ancient Mars. The earliest beings to stride across Martian soil were enormous primate-like creatures, towering, powerful forms resembling the legends of Bigfoot and Sasquatch from Earth's folklore. These beings acted as guardians of the land, protectors of the planet's balance. They lived in harmony with nature, building simple communities, sharing resources, and honoring the cycles of life. Surrounding them, Mars was vibrant. Vast oceans teeming with dolphins, whales, sharks, and shimmering coral reefs. Skies filled with winged creatures. Landscapes alive with diversity and abundance. But the story of Mars soon took a dramatic turn. Visitors from the stars arrived, advanced travelers with purpose. They intermingled with the native primates, blending their essence to create hybrid beings. These new forms were tall, elongated in frame, with smooth faces and skin tones that resembled those of Earth's Aboriginal and Asian peoples. From this merging arose 3 distinct humanoid subraces, each spreading across different regions of the Martian world. They built colonies, adapted to the varying climates, and gave rise to flourishing societies. As time passed, Martian civilization advanced. Their technologies grew ever more sophisticated, and their mastery of science expanded rapidly. Yet with progress came danger. Mars caught the attention of powerful negative forces, beings from Orion and the draconian empires. These entities descended upon the planet, conducting genetic manipulations and offering technologies designed not for enlightenment, but for conquest and destruction. They seduced the Martians with promises of power, turning their brilliance toward weapons and domination. What began as a world of balance and potential was slowly led into shadow. The Martians, once a people of harmony and vision, became entangled in conflict and corruption. Thus, a dark chapter unfolded upon Mars, one that would ultimately reshape the destiny of the planet and its people forever. After the Martians established their civilization, they inevitably drew the attention of outside forces, most notably the Draconians and the Orions. These advanced but negatively oriented beings saw Mars as an opportunity. The Draconians, in particular, offered the Martians advanced technology, but their exchange came at a cost. In return, they demanded genetic material. Through this bargain, they engineered a hybrid race known as the Maldekos, a people designed with the traits of conquest, domination, and unchecked pride. These hybrids were powerful, but they were also deeply self-centered and warlike, serving the interests of their draconian creators. Around 27 million years ago, Mars reached a critical turning point that would forever alter its destiny. For countless ages, the red planet had been a fertile ground for the growth of life and the unfolding of consciousness. Its civilizations had thrived, exploring both spirituality and technology. But the draconian intervention set into motion a struggle that transcended Mars itself, a struggle for the very direction of consciousness in that part of the galaxy. The arrival of the Maldekos fractured Martian society. Where once there had been unity and balance, now there was division. The native Martians sought harmony and spiritual growth, but the hybrids embodied aggression and the hunger for power. Their very existence tilted the planet toward polarity, and soon, conflict ignited. What began as tension over resources and governance escalated into a catastrophic war. But this was no ordinary conflict. It was a battle for the soul of the planet. Both sides unleashed technologies of staggering power, weapons capable of reshaping the surface of Mars itself. The Martians, desperate to defend their world, pushed their sciences to extremes. The Maldekos, driven by conquest, sought complete domination. The results were devastating beyond imagination. Mars, once alive with oceans, forests, and skies, was torn apart. Its atmosphere was stripped away, its waters boiled into the void, and its vibrant ecosystems collapsed into barren rock and dust. The biosphere that had nurtured consciousness for millions of years was gone in the span of a war. Survivors of the catastrophe were few. Some Martians fled deep underground, building hidden sanctuaries where life could continue. Others looked to the stars. Many among the Martian Council made the fateful decision to journey to Earth, bringing with them the sacred task of seeding a new world. On Earth, they began their great work anew. They refined and adjusted the physical blueprint, creating the form that would one day become the human vehicle, an instrument capable of carrying the lessons of Mars, while also holding the potential for greater balance and spiritual awakening. Thus, from the ashes of Mars, the seeds of humanity were sown. Fueled by the lingering influence of the Orion forces, the Martians descended into bitter internal wars that tore their world apart. a deep division arose between two factions: those who remained spiritually aligned, seeking harmony with the cosmic order, and those who had succumbed to the allure of negative energies, driven by ambition, pride, and desire for control. This struggle intensified over millennia, escalating into a full-scale conflict that ultimately rendered Mars uninhabitable, a world no longer able to sustain life or nurture the evolution of consciousness. Amid this cataclysm, the Guardians of Mars, a coalition led by the Elohim Collective and councils from countless planetary spheres, intervened. They constructed a vast interstellar vessel, a sanctuary of safety and preservation, designed to carry the survivors of light beyond the doom of their world. Into this mothership were gathered the souls of those Martians who had remained aligned with the higher path, sparing them the cycle of death and reincarnation. These souls were protected, preserved in stasis, held in trust until a new world could be prepared to receive them. That opportunity arose some 75,000 years ago, when Earth reached a stage of readiness for a profound new seeding. The Guardians united two streams of consciousness. First, the emergent souls of Earth's second-density beings, creatures who had recently achieved self-awareness and were ready to begin the trials and lessons of third density. And second, the preserved Martian souls, now given a second chance at life. Through careful genetic refinement, the Martian essence was merged into newly designed human forms, vessels capable of carrying their consciousness forward along the evolutionary path. The Guardians became the architects of humanity itself. They crafted the third-density human body, shaped as we now recognize it, but with deliberate enhancements. The brain was expanded, with particular attention to the left hemisphere, igniting the analytical mind. This gift was far from accidental. It was designed to grant humanity the power of discernment, the ability to reason, and the capacity to exercise free will, tools essential for navigating the complex path of evolution on Earth. Later, around 46,000 years ago, the remaining Martian survivors were also brought to Earth. Unlike the earlier Maldekian seeds, these souls were placed into newly refined human bodies, vessels shaped under the guidance of the Council of Saturn, also known in some traditions as the Galactic Federation of Light. These forms became the foundation of modern humanity, carrying within them the echoes of a lost world, the wisdom of Mars, and the promise of evolution yet to come. After the cataclysm that shattered Mars, countless Martian souls found new incarnations on Earth. These beings, born of the red planet, carried with them a naturally fiery and progressive energy. They were bold, ambitious, and at times aggressive, qualities that had once fueled the wars on their homeworld, ultimately rendering its surface uninhabitable for third-density life. When they transitioned into Earth's third-density cycle, these inherent tendencies and biases accompanied them, coloring the early stages of human civilization. This cycle began nearly 75,000 years ago, according to our current calendar. The first Martian incarnations on Earth concentrated in regions that are now recognized as the Middle East and parts of Africa. From these early settlements emerged populations who would later be identified as the ancestors of the Jewish people, the Palestinians, the Muslims, and other groups of Middle Eastern heritage. As these Martian-descended populations continued their cycles of reincarnation, learning the intricate lessons of love, cooperation, and spiritual growth, they gradually dispersed across the globe, Over time, they became foundational to other human lineages and the spiritual traditions that would shape the world. The Russian and Eastern Orthodox churches, various Christian denominations, and the Protestant branches, though not the Roman Catholic lineage. In all of these peoples, a significant portion of the early souls originally came from Mars. Their fiery energy, ambition, and capacity for leadership left an enduring imprint on the development of human societies, seeding traits of courage, resilience, and innovation that would ripple through history. Around 5.6 million years ago, upon the crimson sands of Mars, a new chapter in the evolution of consciousness began. It was here that the beings who would one day be known as the Luciferian collective first entered the cycle of incarnation. In those early times, their existence was simple and elemental. Bound initially to the element of fire, they later assumed the forms of plants, learning the quiet lessons of growth, patience, and stillness. As eons passed, they progressed into the animal kingdom, where instinct, movement, and survival became their teachers. Each stage carried them further along the spiral of experience, preparing them for the awakening of self-awareness. Eventually, one soul emerged into third density, the realm of conscious choice and self-recognition. This being was named Lever, a name that would later be whispered by humans as Lucifer. At the dawn of his self-awareness, Lucifer radiated love, compassion, and curiosity. His spirit was deeply aligned with the light, eager to serve, to nurture, and to uplift those around him. But Mars itself became a crucible of conflict. The Martian wars erupted, tearing the planet apart with violence and chaos. In the midst of this cosmic turmoil, the Elohim collective reached out to Lucifer, offering the sacred codes of light. They invited him to stand as a beacon, anchoring higher vibration and love amidst the devastation. For a time, he accepted this divine calling, joining the positive forces to safeguard the remnants of his world. Yet over the ages, a profound shift occurred. Lucifer turned from the guidance of the Elohim and chose a path of power, separation, and control. In aligning with these forces, he distanced himself from the light, and his influence contributed to the collapse of Mars. From this divergence arose the first negative social memory complex, a collective consciousness rooted in self-serving thought, fear, and domination. Lucifer and his followers polarized strongly towards service to self, with more than 95% of their energy dedicated to negative alignment. Graduating into fourth density as a unified consciousness, they became the first true Luciferian collective, a vast entity devoted to self-interest and the pursuit of power. From their origin on Mars, their influence extended far and wide. They merged with the Anunnaki of Nibiru, entwined with certain gray and reptilian intelligences, and eventually traveled to the Orion star system. There, they allied with advanced negative beings, further amplifying their reach and consolidating their cosmic influence. Thus, the Luciferian collective was born, not a single people, but a convergence of many, drawn from different worlds and galaxies, united by a singular purpose. Across the cosmos, they became recognized as a vast network of negative consciousness, ever working to shape civilizations, guide them toward separation, and perpetuate the path of service to self. About 705,000 years ago, our solar system bore little resemblance to the one we inhabit today. Where the asteroid belt now drifts silently between Mars and Jupiter, there once existed a vibrant and thriving world known as Malddec. The origins of life on Malddec remain shrouded in mystery, yet by roughly 3 million years ago, the planet had already cultivated life across the spectrum, from the elemental first density forms to stones, plants, animals, and finally to third density humanoids. Malddec was a super-Earth, a world of vast landscapes and monumental life. Its mountains soared far beyond Everest or even Olympus Mons, and its forests reached heights rivaling the tallest skyscrapers. Even its insects and animals attained staggering proportions. But above all, among its creations walked giants. The Maldekians looked very much like humans in form, but their scale was far beyond anything we know. They stood towering, 70 to 90 feet tall. In the embrace of Malddec's lighter gravity and abundant life force, these beings thrived. Their lifespans stretched 5 times longer than ours, yet their hearts and spirits remained unlike human ones. While they achieved dazzling feats of technology, they neglected the cultivation of inner wisdom. Emotions, compassion, and the pursuit of unity were secondary to the art of invention, and too often, their brilliance was directed toward the creation of weapons of war. Their civilization bore a striking resemblance to the legends we now tell of Atlantis, a society of immense technological mastery, yet lacking restraint and foresight. Much of Maldekian culture gravitated toward what we might call the negative polarity, the path of service to self. And yet, paradoxically, many Maldekians genuinely believed they were acting for the good of all. In their perception, their choices were noble, even selfless. But the reality was catastrophic. Their unchecked ambitions sowed the seeds of their planet's undoing. At that same time, Mars was far from the barren desert we know today. It was a habitable moon of Malddec, vibrant with life and its own population of Martians. Imagine, if you will, Earth's moon alive with thriving civilizations, and you would glimpse the reality of that era. But both Malddec and Mars soon fell under the shadow of an external influence, the Orions. These advanced and power-driven beings, aligned with negative intent, shared with these worlds the secrets of destructive technologies. Under their guidance, tensions escalated, and war erupted between the Maldekians and the Martians, a conflict that would set the stage for the ultimate annihilation of a world. The flourishing civilizations of Mars and Maldek did not go unnoticed in the vastness of the cosmos. They caught the gaze of the Orions and the Draconians, ancient, highly advanced, and intensely negative beings whose ambition was nothing less than the domination of the entire solar system. Their goal was to bend these worlds toward the path of separation and control, to lead them into darkness. These malevolent forces infiltrated Martian and Maldekian societies, subtly at first, then overtly. They shared forbidden knowledge and advanced technologies, weapons of immense destructive power, comparable to nuclear devices, under the guise of progress and enlightenment. But this knowledge was not given for growth or unity. It was a gift designed to fuel conflict, sow division, and escalate the destructive tendencies already present among these civilizations. Under the insidious influence of the Orions, Draconians, and other negative entities, Mars and Maldek were soon engulfed in a series of devastating interplanetary wars and internal civil conflicts. During these battles, the Martians received direct assistance from the Orions, tipping the scales in their favor. Malddec suffered heavily as its cities burned and its natural landscapes were scarred, but this was only the beginning of the planet's downfall. The ultimate catastrophe that shattered Malddec did not come from external invaders alone. It came from within. The Maldekians, driven by pride, ambition, and their untempered technological mastery, turned their brilliance into instruments of self-destruction. In their relentless pursuit of power and dominance, they ignited the final chain of events that tore their world apart, leaving only fragments to drift as the asteroid belt. In this tragic turn, Malddec's demise became a stark testament to the dangers of brilliance untempered by wisdom and the peril of civilizations seduced by the dark path. About 750,000 years ago, the Maldekians had reached the pinnacle of technological mastery, a point where their ingenuity and ambition exceeded all previous limits. They possessed the ability to trigger an event of unimaginable magnitude, an artificially created solar flash. Yet their brilliance was shadowed by hubris, and their unchecked technological use escalated into a war of unprecedented scale. They pushed their weapons to the very edge of possibility, and the consequences were catastrophic. Malddec itself could not withstand the fury of its own children. The planet was torn asunder, shattered beyond repair, leaving only fragments to drift through the void, a grim monument to the peril of untempered power. This cataclysm struck around 705,000 years ago, though life on Malddec had emerged far earlier than on Earth. Their world had nurtured life long before our planet could, offering fertile conditions for the rise of consciousness. Yet when destruction came, the Maldekians were plunged into a profound collective trauma. Their consciousness became ensnared in what might be called a knot of fear, a tightly wound energetic tangle from which no one could reach them for ages. All attempts by outside beings to intervene were met with resistance, as the intensity of their shock created an almost impenetrable barrier. They went through several stages of transition. The first stage of transition began roughly 500,000 years ago. Their collective energy, though still entangled, began to stabilize, a seed of possibility forming within the confines of their trauma. For millennia, it remained inaccessible until approximately 200,000 years ago, when a member of the Confederation succeeded in loosening the knot. The trapped souls of Malddec were gradually released into the inner dimensions, into realms beyond physical time and space. There, they began the slow, painstaking work of healing, reconnecting with the fragments of themselves and regaining the ability to process their past. As their healing progressed, these souls reflected deeply on the consequences of their actions, contemplating the weight of the devastation they had caused. With insight and emerging compassion, they began to make choices to restore balance and to prepare for a new chapter in their evolution. Finally, around 46,000 years ago, these beings made a conscious decision to incarnate on Earth. They entered the planetary sphere, beginning a new cycle of growth within the Neanderthal populations. Here, on Earth, the Maldekians would continue their evolutionary journey, carrying the memory of their past, yet striving toward a higher understanding of love, responsibility, and unity. Around 981,000 years ago, in one of Malddec's earliest timelines, the first forms of what we now call Bigfoot began to emerge. These beings began at the most elemental level of consciousness, first density, where their sole task was to experience and learn the lessons of simple existence. For roughly 1,800 years, they remained in this foundational state, gradually growing in awareness until they evolved into second-density beings, gaining a basic understanding of themselves and the world around them. Yet Malddec was home to civilizations far more advanced than anything humanity has ever known. Its third-density inhabitants wielded technologies of astonishing power, capable of altering matter, energy, and even consciousness itself. In their curiosity and ambition, the Maldekians began to experiment with the creatures of their world, much as humans on Earth experiment with the animals around them. Among these second-density beings were the Bigfoot entities, who became the subjects of these cosmic experiments. One experiment, in particular, changed the course of their existence forever. The Bigfoot beings were infused with enhanced memory, the ability to perceive and interact with the very fabric of space and time, and even the power to move between dimensions. No longer were they ordinary creatures of flesh and instinct. They had become living instruments of immense power, capable of influencing reality itself. When the Malddec War erupted, these enhanced Bigfoots were deployed as formidable soldiers, their extraordinary abilities harnessed for conflict. Yet the war spiraled into devastation, culminating in the catastrophic destruction of Malddec itself. The survivors carried the weight of this tragedy, their consciousness scarred by the loss of their world and the collapse of the society that had created them. After the fall of Malddec, many of these beings sought refuge deep within the hidden recesses of Earth, retreating into cave systems and remote wilderness far from human life. Today, most of them exist primarily in dimensions beyond ordinary perception, stepping into our reality only rarely. When they do appear, it is often for karmic reasons, drawn by unresolved threads from their past. Many still carry the echoes of imbalance and unfinished lessons, returning to Earth to restore harmony through acts of service, connection with their own kind, and the pursuit of self-awareness and spiritual growth.